So the verdicts are in, save for count 2, and Mohammed Amaaz has been convicted on counts 1, 3, and 4 for assaulting 2 female police officers and a member of the public. So now thoughts obviously turn to sentence. Now, I'm not going to speak for the judge, but I can give you a roundabout idea of what you might expect for those sentences. So we'll go to the sentencing guidelines in just a moment. But first of all, I'd like to commend Manchester Evening News, firstly, as they broke the CCTV footage early on in this case, way back last year. And obviously they've reported on it right up until now. But also, I would like to say that sometimes people get things wrong. And in this case, I think the Home Office got it wrong, and specifically Yvette Cooper, when she posted this. This was dated July 25th last year. So I've said my views previously that I think a lot of things have been premature. So let's take a look at what she said here. She said, "This morning, I've spoken to Greater Manchester Police and the Mayor of Greater Manchester about the urgent steps they are taking in response to the incident at Manchester Airport on Tuesday evening and the video that circulated online." This is the original video. "I share the deep concern surrounding the video and understand the widespread distress it will have caused. I welcome the initiation of an independent investigation by the IOPC following a referral from Greater Manchester Police. It's extremely important that the IOPC are able to begin the investigation swiftly and conduct it thoroughly, examining all the evidence with clear and transparent ways for those affected to be able to raise their concerns with the IOPC. I welcome the engagement by the Mayor of Greater Manchester and local communities. It's essential that the police have the trust of communities and the public rightly expect high standards from those in charge of keeping us safe. I'm continuing to receive updates from Greater Manchester Police. It's vital that we now allow this investigation to proceed fairly and independently." And just to be clear, when they say got it wrong, I mean it was premature, because that was before this footage was released, which ultimately became part of the prosecution case. Now, this was a couple of days later, which obviously showed a very different picture to what they were talking about in the first place. But let's go back, first of all, to the Greater Manchester Police website, because there is a statement here from the Chief Constable, which I will read to you. Let's zoom in on that. So he says, "While disappointed that the prosecution case was not fully endorsed, i.e. count 2, he said, I welcome the findings of the jury in respect of the convicted offender, whose appalling conduct has now been exposed to legitimate public scrutiny. I am grateful to the prosecution team and those investigating officers from GMP who've worked hard to assist the court in enabling justice to be done in respect of those counts where a verdict was reached. GMP is actively supportive of a retrial in respect of the 2 counts where a verdict was not achieved. This is regarding Mohammed Ahmad and Mohammed Amaaz on count 2, which I understand they are now going to seek a retrial." He goes on, "We remain fully committed to providing the prosecution team with every assistance needed to reach an outcome on those matters. Our officers first approached the man now convicted in order to make an arrest following an unprovoked assault on an innocent man in the presence of his wife and children." That was the bit in the cafe earlier on. They were responding quickly to precisely the sort of outrageous criminal behaviour that rightly offends the public. Whilst assaults on police officers are sadly not uncommon, 44 of my officers are assaulted every week across Greater Manchester, such attacks can never be justified. Our officers are decent people who routinely place themselves in harm's way to protect the public. They deserve our respect and support. And I would like to say that I think they've garnered the support of the entire nation throughout this case. My comments. Reading on, I'm particularly grateful to those members of the public who've contacted the force in order to pass on their best wishes to the officers affected. And I would like to do exactly the same and pass on my good wishes. And please do so in the comments below. Pass your good wishes to the officers. I'm sure some of them will read those comments and hopefully watch this video to get my words of support as well. Manchester Evening News, as I said, have been sterling in reporting this throughout. Let's take a look at potential sentences here. Now, as I say, I'm not going to speak for the judge, but let's have a very broad look. There are 2 sets of guidelines for sentencing here. One is for the ABH, the section 47 here, assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and the other, common assault, a section 39 Criminal Justice Act offence, which is ordinarily tried summarily, but because it's together with another, they all go to the Crown Court. So the way that works is if you get one going to the Crown Court and one is normally summarily only, they all go to the Crown Court. That's the way that works. And I've also noted in the comments that some people think that this might end up a suspended sentence, meaning he doesn't go to prison. Now, it can only be suspended if the sentence is under 2 years. So if it is any more than 2 years, then the sentence cannot be suspended. There's also a hint about this in that it's been remanded into custody, which suggests that a custodial sentence is expected, and so I don't expect it to be under 2 years, and I don't expect it to be suspended. But obviously, that's a matter for the judge. And also, while you're here, please do subscribe to the channel. About half of you don't do so. I do spend a lot of time researching and putting time into these videos, so I'm really grateful for you to subscribe to this channel. Help me reach 1 million subscribers. That is my goal, so thank you very much. So let's take a look, first of all, at the member of the public, Mr. Ismail. Mohammed Amaaz was found guilty on that charge. Now, the way these work, I will run through these very quickly. These are my very first thoughts on this, so I'll probably think about it in more detail, and I may revise what I say, but here we are. The way that these work is you look at the offence category, which is culpability and harm. So obviously A being the most serious and category 1 being the most serious for harm, and then you come down to a table. My estimate here is based on what's happened. It was a deliberate headbutt, possibly impulsive, but minimal to no lasting injury. So assuming a minor harm here, but a medium to high level of culpability in that it's quite a serious attack, but nonetheless, it could be between the two. So I'm going to hazard a guess that will be somewhere in the middle here at 6 to 12 weeks custody. Now, as we move to the other offences, you might consider that they'll run concurrently together, meaning it doesn't add any additional time to the overall sentence, or run consecutively. Now, it may be that the judge says this was a separate incident and therefore runs consecutively. Overall, it will probably run concurrently, but that will be a matter for the judge. Now looking at the assault emergency worker on PC Ellie Cook, it's the same sentencing guidelines with a maximum of 2 years custody. Again, we use the same table here, but you can see that the high culpability, a prolonged, persistent attack, use of substantial force. She certainly described the use of substantial force there. This is no doubt high culpability in my mind. And as to harm, this is a relatively easy test as well. More than minor physical or psychological harm or distress. So this, for me, is clearly a category A1 or 1A. And so looking down to the table here, I would well expect this to be right at the top end, up to 26 weeks custody. Looking at the ABH, which is the lead charge in this case, the most serious, with a maximum of 5 years custody. This is, of course, for PC Ward with the broken nose. Again, I don't think there's any real argument with the fact that she was a police officer, the fact that it was a prolonged and persistent attack, the fact that there was a serious amount of harm caused there with the broken nose, etc. I would say this is quite easily high culpability. It's aggravated by the fact she's an emergency worker. It's aggravated by being in a public setting and with other people around. And certainly for me, category 1 harm as well. Now, some people have asked why this was charged as ABH and not GBH. Now, I'm not going to speak for the CPS or criticize the CPS, but it is the case sometimes that these things are charged less severely than they might be to secure a conviction. In this case, it was charged as ABH. They obviously saw fit that a maximum of 5 years would be sufficient. So coming back to the table here, taking the harm and culpability. So I would say that this is probably going to start right at the top end here at 2.5 years, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what the judge pulls together for aggravating and mitigating factors. There are lots of factors to consider here. It was a public place, lots of people around, several emergency workers involved. It spilled over from an incident with a member of the public for which he was also found guilty. So it's an extension in the nexus of facts that led up to this attack at the airport. And so all of these different factors taken together, I think that they will aggravate the situation. Of course, I'm not going to speak for the judge, but I would say if they all ran concurrently, I would be looking at a minimum of 2.5, 3 years for all of these combined. Obviously, it may be very much more than that, and the judge may come underneath that, depending on what he looks at for mitigating factors and so on, being young and described as a student, etc. As for count 2, I understand the CPS is going to look for a retrial for both defendants on that count. And as for Mohammed Amaaz, I understand that he's been remanded into custody, which is a sure sign of an immediate custodial sentence, which I think everybody expects. So that is a very quick rundown. I will give it more thought and look through it a little bit more. So there we have it. Justice being done, at least insofar as counts 1, 3, and 4 are concerned. And we'll wait to hear about count 2. So as to a few comments about the defense itself, which I can now give you in relation to those counts, I think it was a ridiculous argument all along, because whilst self-defense is a full defense if made out, Amaaz said that he thought he was going to be battered to death by the police in cold blood in a busy airport in front of dozens of other people and CCTV, etc. And I think that is quite frankly the most ludicrous thing that I've ever heard. And so I think that was a ridiculous defense, whilst it could be a defense if you were genuinely mistaken. But let's say that it was somebody in the middle of a car park and a police officer approached you in plain clothes, didn't say they were police, you didn't know they were police. That'd be a completely different story. These were fully uniformed, armed police officers in an airport, and I think that was a ridiculous defense. So, and given the overwhelming evidence of CCTV footage, body-worn footage, etc., I think that should have been absolutely crystal clear. So let me know your thoughts and comments in the box below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.